Imagine this. You're standing on a perfect spring morning, watching 1,000 people dressed like they're attending a royal wedding. Designer suits, pearl necklaces, polished leather shoes. They're laughing, gossiping, completely carefree. Now imagine those same people 2 hours later, on their knees, vomiting, sobbing uncontrollably, some never speaking again for the rest of their lives. What could possibly break the human spirit that completely in just 120 minutes? Before I tell you, let me ask you something. Have you ever suspected something terrible was happening nearby but convinced yourself it wasn't your problem? Maybe you've heard rumors at work, in your neighborhood, or even in your own family. You pushed it away because confronting it felt too dangerous, too uncomfortable, too real. Keep that feeling in mind, because what you're about to hear is the story of an entire city that made that choice, and the moment one American general decided to destroy their comfortable lives forever. This is the story of April 16, 1945, the day Weimar's aristocracy took a walk they would never forget. Let me paint you a picture of Weimar, Germany in 1945. Close your eyes for a second. Can you imagine the most cultured city you've ever visited? Maybe it's Paris, Vienna, or Boston. Now multiply that sophistication by 10. That was Weimar. This wasn't just another German town. This was the beating heart of European civilization. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe walked these streets. Friedrich Schiller wrote his masterpieces here. The Bauhaus movement, which literally changed how we design everything around us today, was born in Weimar. The city had more libraries per capita than anywhere else in Germany. On any given evening, you could hear Beethoven's symphonies floating from concert halls. Philosophy professors debated Kant over espresso. Women in elegant dresses strolled through parks discussing literature. The people of Weimar believed they were untouchable. They believed culture was a shield against darkness. They were wrong. Here's what they didn't want to admit. Just 5 miles up a tree-lined hill called Ettersberg, something unspeakable was happening. Something that had been happening since 1937. 8 full years. Now, quick question for you. If something horrific was happening 5 miles from your home for 8 years, would you know? Would you want to know? Drop your honest answer in the comments. No judgment. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. The Buchenwald concentration camp wasn't hidden in some remote forest. The SS officers who ran it lived in Weimar. They shopped in the same stores. Their children went to the same schools. And here's the part that should make your blood run cold. The smoke from the crematorium drifted over the city every single day. The ashes literally fell on their windowsills like snow. But when American soldiers arrived in April 1945, every single person in Weimar said the exact same thing. Or haben es nicht gewusst. We knew nothing. They had excuses for everything. The smoke? Oh, that's just a factory. Those emaciated men working at the railway station? Volunteers. That strange smell on the wind? Industrial chemicals. They lived inside a fortress of denial so strong, so perfectly constructed, that they genuinely believed they were innocent. General George S. Patton was about to demolish that fortress with a sledgehammer. April 11, 1945. Patton's Third Army liberated Buchenwald. Now, Patton was no stranger to violence. This was a man who had seen the beaches of Normandy. He'd witnessed tank battles, artillery bombardments, hand-to-hand combat. He was called Old Blood and Guts for a reason. Nothing rattled him. But when he walked through the gates of Buchenwald on April 13th, something inside him broke. 20,000 prisoners were still alive. I use the word alive loosely. These were walking corpses. Men who weighed less than 60 pounds. Children who had forgotten how to smile. Their eyes were hollow, their skin stretched tight over their bones like parchment over a drum. In the courtyard, there was a pile. I need you to understand what I mean by pile. Hundreds of naked bodies stacked like logs, their limbs frozen in twisted positions, their mouths open in eternal screams, yellow skin, sunken eyes that still stared at nothing. Patton walked around that pile twice. His aide said the general's hands were shaking. He wrote in his diary that night, "I have never felt so sick in my life. This is not war. This is madness." But here's what pushed him over the edge. He looked down the hill toward Weimar. He could see farmers plowing their fields, women hanging laundry, children playing, life continuing as if nothing was wrong. The distance between the death camp and normal life was less than 5 miles. Patton turned to his officers. His face was red. His jaw clenched so tight his aide thought he might crack his teeth. And then he gave an order that would change everything. "Find me 1,000 of their finest citizens. I want the professors, the doctors, the lawyers, the wealthy businessmen, the politicians' wives. Round them up. We're taking them on a field trip." His officers were confused. "Sir, the Geneva Convention." Patton cut him off. "I don't care about the Geneva Convention right now. These people claim they're innocent? Let's test that claim. Get them here. Tomorrow. All of them." April 16, 1945. 6 a.m. American MPs knocked on doors all over Weimar. Not the poor neighborhoods. Not the working-class districts. They went straight to the mansions, the luxury apartments, the prestigious addresses. A university professor opened his door in a silk bathrobe. "What is the meaning of this?" "You're coming with us, sir." "General's orders. I am a respected academic." "You cannot." The MP just pointed his rifle. "Start walking." By 8 a.m., 1,000 citizens were assembled. And here's what's so chilling. They treated it like a social event. Women wore their finest fur coats. Men put on their best suits and fedora hats. They applied makeup. They styled their hair. Some even brought picnic baskets. They thought it was propaganda theater. They thought the Americans were going to show them some fake exhibit and then send them home. They were laughing, gossiping, flirting. One woman in a mink coat turned to her friend. "This is so dramatic. Americans love their shows, don't they?" The march began. American soldiers flanked them on both sides, rifles ready. Jeeps drove alongside to prevent anyone from escaping. But nobody tried to escape. Why would they? They were innocent, remember? The walk took 2 hours. For the first hour, the conversation flowed. People discussed the weather, complained about their shoes getting dirty, made jokes about American efficiency. Then the wind shifted. Have you ever smelled something so terrible that it physically changed you? Not just made you gag, but actually altered something fundamental in your brain? That's what hit them at the 1-hour mark. The smell of Buchenwald wasn't just death. It was old death, layered death, the accumulation of years of burning human flesh mixed with disease and decay. It was a smell that stuck to your clothes, your hair, the inside of your nostrils. You couldn't wash it off. The conversation stopped. The women pulled out perfumed handkerchiefs. The men covered their faces with their sleeves. But the American soldiers pushed them forward. "Keep moving. No stopping." One wealthy banker tried to turn back. "I have asthma. I cannot breathe this air. I must return home." An MP blocked his path. "You'll breathe it, sir. Just like the prisoners breathed it for 8 years. They reached the main gate of Buchenwald at 10 a.m. The iron gate had an inscription welded into it. Jedem das Sein. To each his own. A sick Nazi joke suggesting everyone got what they deserved. The moment they passed through the gate, everything changed. The first thing they saw were the prisoners. Thousands of them, standing behind barbed wire in complete silence. Just staring. Their eyes were dead, but somehow still accusing. They didn't shout. They didn't cry. They just watched these wealthy Germans in their expensive clothes walk past. That silence was more terrifying than any scream could have been. One woman in a pearl necklace locked eyes with a prisoner. He was maybe 19 years old, but he looked 80. His striped uniform hung off his skeletal frame. He didn't blink. Just stared at her necklace, then back to her face. She started crying. Not sobbing. Just tears streaming down her face while she walked. The American soldiers guided them to the first stop, the crematorium courtyard. In the center was a wagon, piled high with naked bodies. Arms and legs tangled together like tree branches. Mouths frozen open. Eyes that would never close. The civilians stopped dead. The color drained from every face. A prominent lawyer vomited immediately. Then a doctor. Then a businessman. Soon half the group was bent over, retching. But here's the thing that still gives me chills when I think about it. The American soldiers didn't comfort them. They didn't offer handkerchiefs or water. They just said, "Keep looking. You haven't seen anything yet. This moment right here, this is where the lie died. This is where we didn't know. Became impossible to say ever again." The Americans forced them inside a building. The pathology lab. On a table, displayed like items in a museum, were the souvenirs of the SS. 2 shrunken heads. Preserved pieces of tattooed human skin. A lampshade made from a prisoner's tattoo. The commandant's wife, Ilse Koch, had a collection. When she saw a prisoner with an interesting tattoo, she'd order them killed so she could add to her collection. The civilians stared at this table in complete silence. Several men were openly weeping. A professor fell to his knees and started praying. An American officer stood by the table. He spoke in perfect German. "You say you didn't know? These were made here while you attended the opera, while you drank your coffee, while you read your Goethe." A former prisoner, barely able to stand, walked up to a well-dressed German businessman. He pointed a shaking finger at him. "I know you. I worked at your factory before they took me. You saw them load us onto the trucks. You watched. And you went back to counting your money." The businessman collapsed. "I didn't know where they were taking you. I swear. I didn't know." But his own voice betrayed him. He knew he was lying. The tour continued. They saw the little camp where prisoners were left to die of typhus. The stench was so overpowering that even the American soldiers wore masks. But the German civilians? No masks allowed. They had to breathe it all in. By the time they reached the end of the tour, the transformation was complete. These proud aristocrats were destroyed. Their makeup was streaked with tears. Their suits were covered in dust and vomit. They walked like zombies, their eyes glazed over. The march back down the hill was completely silent. No one spoke. No one made eye contact. They looked like they had aged 20 years in 2 hours. That night, back in Weimar, several prominent citizens committed suicide. They couldn't live with what they had seen. More importantly, they couldn't live with the reflection they saw in the mirror. When General Eisenhower heard about Patton's tour, he didn't reprimand him. He expanded it. He ordered the press to come. Congressmen, parliament members, newspaper editors. He wanted witnesses. Because he knew something crucial. People would try to deny this happened. Eisenhower was right. Today, there are people who claim the Holocaust was exaggerated or never happened at all. But because of Patton's decision, because of those forced tours, we have thousands of German witnesses who couldn't deny what they saw with their own eyes. So let me end with this question. And I really want you to think about it before you answer in the comments. The people of Weimar lived 5 miles from a death camp for 8 years. They claim they didn't know. Do you believe them? Or do you think they knew and chose not to see? And here's the harder question. If something terrible was happening 5 miles from your home right now, would you know? Would you investigate? Or would you find a way to convince yourself it's not your problem? These aren't just historical questions. They're questions about human nature, about what we choose to see and what we choose to ignore, about the difference between innocence and willful blindness. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have an honest conversation with me and with each other. Because the lesson of Buchenwald isn't just about Germany in 1945. It's about all of us right now today. What are we choosing not to see? And if you found this story as powerful as I did, share it. The reason we study history isn't to judge the past. It's to understand ourselves. Hit that like button if this made you think. Subscribe if you want more stories that challenge how we see the world. Because the truth is uncomfortable, but it's the only thing that sets us free. I'll see you in the next one. Stay curious, stay honest, and never stop asking difficult questions.